Welcome to the Joy Lab podcast, where we help you uncover and foster your most joyful self. Your hosts, Dr. Henry Emmons and Dr. Amy Prasek, bring you the ideal mix of soulful and scientifically sound tools to spark your joy, even when it feels dark. When you're ready to experiment with more joy, combine this podcast with the full Joy Lab program over at joylab.coach.
Hello, I'm Henry Emmons, and welcome to Joy Lab.
And I'm Amy Prasek. So here at Joy Lab, we infuse science with soul to help you build your resilience and uncover your joy. We are talking about viruses and depression today, or viruses and mental health. But just like the most surface level discussion, I think for today, though I think it will be very helpful, we will get into this topic in more depth, really around the relationship between inflammation and depression in future episodes. But for today, we're very specifically talking about what happens to our mood when we get a virus. I think this is really helpful because it puts some cause behind some experiences of depression. And I think it can also kind of speak to how elegant and purposeful experiences of depression can be. Not all of them by any means, but some of them. And if you're listening in real time, it's cold and flu season still. So this conversation may be very relevant. I personally am coming off of a journey with the stomach flu, which my coworkers have heard lots of details about. Too much. It was terrible. And no joke. As I lay on the bathroom floor, catastrophizing, pretty certain that this was the end for me. I was thinking, I know, I took it too far, but I thought, hey, there's that depression. And we should talk about this. We should talk about this. So that was the impetus for this conversation. So briefly, let me explain. When we catch a bug, when we have an infection, our body generally responds by depressing our entire system so that we can conserve energy, so that we are prompted to rest, sleep, and of course, fight the infection. So the mood is depressed too. Motivation drops. We just want to lay around. And this is often called sickness behavior. I like how Dancer and colleagues in one of sort of the key classic articles on this topic, how they describe this. They say, sickness is as normal to infection as the fear response is to a threatening predator. Its purpose is to promote survival of the organism.
Well, as you were talking there, Amy, I was reminded of something that I think a lot of parents of young children can relate to, which is when your kiddo is sick, a lot of times you can just hold them and they will sit still and they'll kind of cuddle up and they're just not moving. And it's a sort of a bittersweet thing for a parent because you don't want to see them sick, but at the same time, it's kind of nice to just be able to hold them like that.
Yeah.
Sickness behavior.
Yeah, they demonstrate it. Yeah. They don't hide it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, that quote that you gave, if I'm hearing it right, that sickness is as normal to infection as the fear response is to a threatening predator. I think what they're saying is that, hey, this is normal. It's normal to look and feel depressed when you're sick, just like it's normal to go into fight or flight when you're being chased by a tiger. I agree with that. That is how we're built. Your body should be primed for action when you're threatened, and it should rest and recover when you're sick. And that is all well and good if the story ended there. Tiger's gone, we relax and return to normal. Illness ends, we bounce back to our old selves. And that's usually how it works. That's how it worked for you, Amy. We just were talking about this. Your illness is over and you're actually, in a way, you're almost feeling better than normal, which is
bring it on.
Sometimes how I come out of an illness too, right. But it doesn't always work that way.
Right.
And there's the rub.
Yeah.
So there appear to be at least two important ways in which viral illnesses mess up our moods. And both of them have to do with the immune system in one way or another. So first, in order to ramp up our immune system to fight off this infection, we increase a chemical called cytokines, which are basically messengers that tell the body to make more immune cells. Get going, we got to fight this thing off. So it kind of gets the whole system activated. But there are some people, like myself, whose immune systems tend to be overreactive. It just goes overboard, overdoes it. And so there's so much inflammation that can then hurt the very tissue that you're supposed to protect. So people with autoimmune disorders, for example, which I'm sure we'll talk about when we really dig into inflammation and depression. So in the brain, inflammation can really mess with our chemicals of mood, including the serotonin and dopamine systems, and this can show up as depression. The second issue is that when there is inflammation in the brain, it can affect what are called glial cells. Glial cells it's pretty much everything except the neurons in the brain. It's all the things that give structure and support to those really important neurons. And these are also very important for cognitive health as we age, but they're also very important for energy and mood. And inflammation, if it's bad or if it goes on a long time, it can even damage the mitochondria in these cells, the mitochondria that produce energy. And at first, that might cause the brain to be overstimulated. But later on, it can make it harder for these glial cells to produce their own energy. And then, unfortunately, when the stress hormones get in the act, it can create this negative loop that can be hard to break, where there's more inflammation, which creates more cell damage, like we just talked about, which creates more stress hormones, and it just keeps circulating. You kind of get the idea.
Yeah, I think I understand you're highlighting those normal multiple processes that can initiate and sustain the sickness behavior and depression of the system, but some can surge too much. They can hang around too long, and then you get caught in that cycle. And I think it's interesting to note, even if we're feeling good physically and mentally, of course, we can still catch a bug. It can take a while to fight an infection and to recover. So our mood can be impacted for longer than a few days. It can be quite a bit longer, even beyond, when those sort of physical symptoms subside. And when this happens, it's sometimes called post-viral fatigue or post-viral syndrome. And that's real. There can be other symptoms along with it. And the fatigue and the impacts on mood can be really substantial. I think it's interesting to note as well that the research on this is pretty lacking, but it's growing a lot more thanks to COVID long haul concerns. But as of now, there's not a clear predictor of who might experience these longer residual impacts of fatigue or mood after an infection. So if you've experienced this, it is not a statement on your current health status, or your resilience. It just happens.
Yeah, that's right. It's another example of how differently we are made from one another. And so this can look so different from one person to the next. And I do think we're learning from long COVID that for some folks, these symptoms can last for weeks or maybe even months. But, I don't think it's limited to long COVID. I think that has been true for a long time with other viral illnesses too, but we just didn't recognize that, until now. I have always noticed that some of my patients seem to develop what ends up being this mystery illness that nobody can figure out. And it just goes on. And it's oftentimes they're more depressed, but it's very physical too. And I know from talking with them that at least some of the time they feel very misunderstood or judged, even by their medical team. Sometimes their symptoms are just kind of dismissed as being in their heads, or they're chalked up to depression and just told to go back to their psychiatrist. So anyway, I'm glad that this issue has gotten more attention. I think that we might finally be learning that depression is a lot more complex and nuanced than we thought. And, this whole topic of inflammation, as you mentioned, Amy, is just really coming to the fore as a legitimate and maybe even a common cause of depression. And just knowing that, if that's what's going on, being aware that that's what's going on can give us more tools to help get better.
Yeah, that awareness is really empowering. Depression does have so many forms and causes, of which can be super helpful to be aware of, like in this case we're talking about now. And in this case, the depression does have a lifespan, or it should. The sickness behavior, the depression should lift. And it's pretty standard advice to see your doctor if this is sort of lingering out a few weeks from the infection. But along with that, let's talk about getting better. Let's touch on a few strategies and options that folks could consider to support their mood after clearing a virus. So the first, I'd say, is to honor what our bodies are just still begging us to do, the purpose of that sickness behavior, really, and that's to rest. The hardest, simple thing to do. And we have to remember that it takes so much energy, like a huge energy expenditure to launch a fever, to fight an infection. We might be laying on the couch, seemingly doing nothing, but our system is just running little marathons inside of us, working to heal itself. And we know how terrible running is, if you've heard me talk about it before. So we know then that this rest process during the infection is essential, and that it also needs to happen in the recovery post-marathon, after the fact, after the infection is cleared. So related to that would be sleep. If you're struggling with your sleep, head over to our Sleeping Well workshop in our NMH community. I'll link to that in the show notes. And then, Henry, do you want to talk about maybe some nourishment options and supplements perhaps to consider?
Sure. So which is it? Starve a cold, feed a fever, or the other way around? I can never remember.
Or liquor before beer, beer before, yeah, I'm not sure.
That's okay, because I don't believe that anyway. But I do think the bottom line here is that when we're fighting something like this off, it's even more important that we are really well hydrated and as well nourished as we can possibly be. I think it's okay, if it's maybe good even, to take cues from your body and not eat unless you're really hungry. But when you do eat, or at least not eat much, but when you do eat, then really make it count. So in other words, this is a time to be extra careful about not just eating empty calories. Yeah, we need the fuel, that's for sure, but we just also want to pack as many micronutrients in there as possible. The body's needing those. So even if you don't feel like eating solid food, this might be a good time for juicing if you've got a juicer or can purchase it somewhere, or just simply getting a good citrus juice to drink so you get the quick calories but also some extra vitamin C. I think it's good to get as many leafy greens and just plain colorful fruits and vegetables because, again, they're so brain and body protective. And then if you don't feel like you have much of an appetite, so you can't eat much, lean on more of the healthy fats than you usually do. So omega-3s are good at reducing inflammation, so you might want to focus on things like nuts and seeds and olive oil and other brain-healthy fats like avocado or coconut oil. I also think that this is a good time to look at supplements, even if you're not usually into them. So, for example, I don't usually take vitamin C. I don't believe in using it every day, at least not for me. But when I'm sick, I'll add 1,000 milligrams a day or more. And I'll also add some zinc, probably 20 to 30 milligrams of zinc. There are also some really good and gentle plant-based products that I think can help boost and support the immune system. A lot of folks have tried echinacea. I prefer a couple of other things like astragalus and elderberry, but again, anything that combines several of these ingredients into one, I think is worth looking at. I think there's also a role here for medicinal mushrooms. It's not what you're thinking of.
Okay.
It's the things that boost the immune system, like reishi, shiitake, maitake. And again, I really prefer to get products that combine a lot of things into one or two high impact formulas. So we'll list a couple of these again in the show notes.
Great, Henry. Thank you for those. So I hope this has been helpful. Some encouragement to rest, to nourish yourselves. I hope that folks can take the time off from work when needed to support their bodies in these phases of healing that are essential. And to close, I want to share a quote from writer and teacher Hiro Boga. I think this is an invitation. She writes, "There's room for all of you and for everything you experience. The grim and the glorious, the wounded, wounding, healing, and healed."
Thank you for listening to the Joy Lab podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, visit joylab.coach to learn more about the full Joy Lab program. Be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Please remember that this content is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to provide medical advice and is not a replacement for advice and treatment from a medical professional. Please consult your doctor or other qualified health professional before beginning any diet change, supplement, or lifestyle program. Please see our terms for more information.